this the militaria equivalent of the back rooms?
I believe it is, and I never want to leave. This is incredible.
This installment of Artifact Highlight takes us to a brick building in the shadow of Gettysburg's Cemetery Hill. I've passed this building decked out in divisional symbols all my visits to the famed battlefield, but a lack of social media connection has often left me unsure when the Battlefield Military Museum is open. That day of waiting is no more, as me and a humble collector had a chance to explore what is touted as the largest private militaria collection in Gettysburg. The museum boasts to have 7,000 pieces of militaria, all purchased by one individual, George W. Marinos. He served in the 176th Armored Field Artillery Battalion, Battery B, during the Korean War. His family is famed in southern Pennsylvania for their candy-making industry. But Marinos' biggest hobby was growing his collection of military relics that spanned the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1963, Marinos constructed a brick building off of Baltimore Pike to put out his Civil War display in time for the centennial of the Battle of Gettysburg. In 1972, an addition was added to facilitate the 20th century collection that dwarfs the 19th century displays. The artifacts are housed in cases that cover each and every inch of wall space, but only a handful of relics have detailed information tablets. Mr. Marinos passed away in 2017, and with him most likely went a lot of knowledge on large portions of the collection. Nevertheless, the mere sight of all these relics under one roof is a sight to behold. Kicking off the tour in the 19th century wing is a wall of muskets and rifles produced in the first half of the 20th century. The piece that grabs all eyes is an 1854 experimental Colt musket. The ID tag claims only 3 were ever manufactured, an early form of breech loading. 2 survive to this day. The Marinos collection has several pieces of clothing related to an Edward G. Bush. Bush graduated from West Point 8th in the class of 1859 and was wounded in the hand in the wheat field at Gettysburg. He would finish the war as a brevet major. This firearm was recovered from the battlefield of First Manassas, with the breech blown apart, most likely from an inexperienced soldier ramming too much powder into the heat of battle. Speaking of field-recovered relics, take a look at this Confederate sword that was found near the Dunker Church of Antietam fame. This haversack was reported to have been carried by a man of the 36th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry 7th PA Reserves. Jacob Cart was a sergeant from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, who gained a Medal of Honor in 1862 at Fredericksburg by capturing enemy colors. The collection hails to have the boots of George Armstrong Custer, as well as the original ensign that was on board the USS Maine. One of the coolest portions of the 19th century collection is the extensive array of Grand Army of the Republic relics. Ribbons and hats relating to this veterans group are both on full display in Marinos' collection. A humble collector directed my attention to several spiked helmets found from various militias and U.S. Army, especially the medical helmet. Speaking of helmets, the Battlefield Military Museum boasts one of the largest collections of World War helmets, and yeah, I'm not going to argue, every case of the 20th century wing of the museum has helmets creeping out of every corner. This collection is massive. The 20th century wing is dominated with relics relating to Nazi Germany. That includes bronze, silver, and gold close combat badges. Awarded to those engaged in hand-to-hand combat, only an estimated 600 were ever awarded in the gold category. The uniform in the middle was put together with articles of clothing typical of a soldier, a part of the Russian Liberation Army, or known as the Vlasov Army, after their commanding officer. They were captured Soviet soldiers who had agreed to fight on behalf of the Germans. They were often kept to mundane functions and ceremonial appearances until the end of the war. General Vlasov is considered the highest-ranking traitor of the Second World War. This ensign flew on board the USS Vestal the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. The Vestal was moored next to the USS Arizona. This pair of epaulets were worn by Admiral William R. Furlong aboard the USS Oglala during the December 7th attacks. Furlong survived the ship's capsizing and would be the commander of Pearl Harbor for the entirety of the war in the Pacific. Furlong kept a piece of a Japanese torpedo that hit the battleship West Virginia. Although commodities such as toilet paper were rationed during the Second World War, exceptions were made with this message toward the leader of the Third Reich. Winding the clocks back to the First World War, one will find several cases depicting in detail scenes of brutal trench warfare. Among the pieces displayed is a German machine gun captured by soldiers of the 60th Infantry Regiment, 5th Division in the midst of the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Now, I know it's hard to see through the light flare on the glass, but that whole wall is covered in extraordinary examples of trench art. What may be the most astonishing piece of the collection is this Blue Max. Blue Max medals can trace their origins back to the 17th century in Germany, most prominent in the 18th and 19th century of Prussia, to honor individuals who displayed repeated acts of gallantry. The Germans continued using them into the 20th century during the First World War. One must be living in order to have been awarded this, hence why it is a high honor. Most who would have been awarded died in action while paperwork was being sorted out. The most famous recipient is perhaps Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron. And folks, I'm going cross-eyed. I must finish with that. Again, this collection contains 7,000 pieces of militaria spanning 100 years. There's so much jam-packed into the cases that it's overwhelming. This is the life's work of one individual. If you are in the Gettysburg area and you see a large American flag flying off of the Baltimore Pike, make sure to stop in and explore the Battlefield Military Museum for yourself. At present, the museum operates with seasonal hours skewed toward the summer and weekends. If you are a collector of militaria, it may just be the highlight of your excursion to some of America's most hallowed ground.